People often ask me to help them manage anxiety or manage anger. Alex, I need some help with anger management. I love that one. And I tell my clients, well, you've probably done a lot of psychotherapy or some kind of, cognitive behavioral therapy, or maybe some sort of counseling, because the idea of managing your emotions is so disempowering. And I ask my clients, look, would you rather manage your anxiety for the rest of your life, manage your anger for the rest of your life, or perhaps you want to dive a little deeper, or let's say very deep, into the very core of your subconscious mind, where all of those inner programs are stored, the ones that cause anxiety and irrational anger, because all of the emotions are bottled up in the psyche. Would you rather manage your anger and anxiety, or would you rather release it in the very core of your being at the root cause level so that there's nothing to manage? My goal as a hypnotherapist, certified clinical hypnotherapist, and also I call myself a hypno coach, because this is not just about therapy work, hypnotherapy, this is also about conditioning work, because it's a process, it's a journey. I take you through certain phases. So my job as a hypnotherapist is to make sure that we reprogram your subconscious mind so that you don't have those unresourceful emotions and there is nothing to manage. So it's going to take you some time to go through the process, because first we need to go do the inner child work and release all kinds of emotions of the younger self. Let's say sadness and fear. That's what we do in phases number 1 and 2. We clear the slate. We want to make sure that all of those negative beliefs of your younger self are completely reprogrammed and the emotions of sadness and fear is gone. That's bottled up from those negative, let's say, traumatic or dramatic events of your life. That's phases 1 and 2. Then in phase 3, we clear anger and we go through forgiveness process. In phase number 4, we clear all the guilt and anger at yourself, and you go through self-acceptance, self-forgiveness process. It's a complete restructuring of the psyche, very deep, very intense, a lot of release, and you feel tremendously empowered. The next video was recorded during one of my masterclasses, which I was teaching a couple of years ago. And I thought it would give you a pretty clear explanation here about how the 5-phase advanced transformational hypnotherapy works, how specifically we help our clients let go of the filters of perception. We also call them the subconscious limiting programs, or early life subconscious limiting beliefs, or early life subconscious limiting decisions. It's all pretty much the same thing. And how we actually help our clients clear those so that they can let go of the past trauma and drama and become confident, empowered, and free. So here it is. What does it mean to have the filters through which you perceive reality? These are perceptual filters. They exist on the level of your subconscious mind, and they literally act like glasses. When you see reality around you, you perceive it through these glasses, and the degree of the distortion of this perception will be directly dependent on how distorted these glasses are. Let me give you an example. I was working with this client, a lady in her mid to late 40s, let's call her Jane. So she came to me with the main issue, the presenting issue was anxiety. This anxiety got really bad over the last couple of years. She works in this pharmaceutical company and she needs to present to the top management of this company, of the division that she works at. This is a big multinational pharmaceutical company. And she is a mid-tier manager. So every 2 weeks, she would need to make a presentation. And every time she goes to this conference room, right before the presentation, she starts to feel this strong anxiety. Heart is racing, her stomach is in knots, she feels this, heaviness in her chest. Sometimes her knees or legs are shaking. She sometimes may sweat or turn red, like really, really unpleasant symptoms. And at times they would get really, really strong, like almost like an anxiety attack. So totally no logic behind it, because she knows that she's prepared, she knows the material, she's very well respected in this company, she was promoted recently, everything's amazing, never has she messed up in these presentations. Nevertheless, she feels this tremendous anxiety. So she had to see a psychologist, which didn't really help her. She had very intense psychotherapy for about 6 months every week and gained a lot of insight, but was not able to transform that problem. She was also seeing a psychiatrist, was prescribed some medication, specifically Xanax, and she started taking it, but she really hated it, so she stopped taking it. So In our work, the part of the journey is what's known as a hypnotic regression. It's a really important process. It's a clinical process where it's actually phase 2 of the work, when I take my clients all the way to the cause of the issues. And I take her back to the initial sensitizing event, and she ends up going to the memory of when she was 7 years of age, when she was standing in front of the class, and the teacher made a humiliating remark. And all the kids in class started to laugh, to the point where she felt so bad, it made her even stutter because she felt very nervous, that made kids laugh even more, and she couldn't talk. She couldn't express herself. Her heart started racing. She felt really, really bad. She experienced extreme anger towards the kids, to the teacher, because the teacher was sarcastic and made some kind of humiliating remark. And the worst part of it is that she knew the answer. She was very well prepared, but because of this situation, a scar was created on the subconscious level. She felt judged, obviously, and she felt unworthy. She felt totally helpless, powerless, very vulnerable, very exposed. She thought that she is not enough. This situation created a scar enough for her to feel a little bit of anxiety every time she would need to speak in front of people. But over time, this is like a cup, and I talked about this in today's training. It's a cup that is being filled drop by drop over time, and it's just a matter of time before that cup gets full. And it happened so that a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, there was an event in her life, which was also discovered in the hypnotic work, in which that cup was actually filled fully, and now every drop begins to overflow the cup. So the symptoms became very, very strong. So in this work, we had to take her back and communicate with that part of her psyche known as the inner child, because the grown-up that you are, the adult self, has an ability to communicate with the younger part of your psyche, just like you would talk to a little child as a mentor, as a coach, as a loving and nurturing parent, and explain to that child that the perceptions that were created as a result of the situation, they're not correct, they're erroneous, and we can reprogram those perceptions, because those perceptions were actually reinforced by a number of events in her life. I remember when she was 9, her brother made a negative comment about her in front of her best friend, which actually made her feel really, really bad, even though she loved her brother, was older brother, but in that moment she totally hated him because he made her feel really bad. And then there was another event when she was 12 and her dad made some kind of sarcastic remark in front of all the guests in the house. It was a dinner of some sort. So she felt, again, very unworthy. She felt judged, she felt rejected. Again, those things accumulate in our psyche. It's a neurological process, and certain part of your neurology will be ignited every time you are presented with a trigger similar to those events. In her case, that filter is known as specifically fear of authority figures. There are thousands of different filters. In her case, whenever she goes into the conference room now as a grown-up, 40 years later, almost, and she's facing the authority figures, which are the bosses of the company, her body starts to react in a very irrational way. But guess what? It's a very rational reaction. The rationale of that is not based on the conscious logic, is based on the subconscious logic, because every time she is looking at the bosses of the company subconsciously, she's actually perceiving the teacher, her brother, her dad, and all other people in between that were in the position of authority, and they were judgmental and they were rejecting her, or at least she perceived it this way. And every time now she's accessing those situations, when she's presented with those triggers, her body is responding as if all of those situations are happening at the same time. Neurologically speaking, she's experiencing what the 7-year-old girl felt when she was in front of the class, what the 9-year-old girl felt when she was judged by her brother, when the 12-year-old girl felt when she was judged by her dad. But neurologically, the same reaction, the cortisol, the adrenaline, because of the perception, and the unconscious mind is acting on the perception, she would re-experience all of those symptoms combined at the same time. That's the way our psyche operates. We need to peel the layers of an onion, layer by layer, to get to the core and transform it in the core. And the beauty of this process is that this is not just talking about it, because you're going to access those emotions, will be able to clear them, to empty the cup and to reprogram the perceptions. And with this lady, she was able to present. She actually went to Germany to the headquarters of this company, and she was presenting in front of like 600 people, including the bosses of the company from all over the world. And she had a blast. She had an amazing experience, because once that reprogramming happens, your perceptions change. And it doesn't matter if you're scared of cockroaches, snakes, judgment, or anything in this world. Whatever the subconscious reaction is, it can be reprogrammed, because you were not born this way. When the baby is born to this world, the baby is only born with two kinds of fears. It's a fear of loud noises and fear of, not authority figures, of course, but a fear of falling. So if you take a little baby and you put that baby over a cliff, the baby will start crying. Why? Because there is a perception of falling, and it's inherited, it's innate, it's built in. But if you take this baby and let's say you expose the baby to a candle that is, the fire is beautiful and it's glowing, the baby will want to grab that fire, and it's going to get hurt. And the program will be created. And now this program is helpful, because every time this baby sees the fire, it will no longer touch it, because there's a protective filter. And this is a kind of a filter that is actually good and it's helpful. But how many filters do we learn or do we create as a result of interacting with life, which are not functional, which are disempowering? And the example of this lady is exactly that. These filters can be unlearned. This is like buying a computer. Everything's running really smoothly. It's super fast. It's new. It's amazing. But as you use it, all kinds of programs are being downloaded. Some of them are useful, like a word processor or the internet browser, but there will be a bunch of other ones that are, let's say, viruses or malware or adware that will be running in the background, slowing down this computer. Our psyche works the same way. These programs can be and should be removed. And using solid hypnotic principles, we can communicate with a part of your psyche known as the inner child and help that part transform. But there is another part of your psyche known as the inner adult and also inner parent. And the key is to make the inner parent, to turn the inner parent part of you, which is your critical voice. It's a cumulative voice of all the authority figures in your life, from a critical voice into loving, mentoring voice. And you want to turn that inner child from hurt and scared inner child into loved, spontaneous and playful and happy inner child. And these are very real components of our psyche that we experience neurologically. Every time you feel scared or sad, I will assure you this is the inner child. Every time you feel critical, angry with yourself or with other people, judgmental, or you're talking about yourself or thinking about yourself in a very negative light and thinking you're not enough, this is your inner parent talking. We can change the dynamic inside of your psyche using hypnotherapy work, peeling the layers of an onion, and transform that in the very core. Once that transformation happens, you cannot go back. This is the power of hypnotherapy work.